It's a story so amazing it couldn't be told until now.
Darling, I must go. There's something I must do. If I don't work, we won't eat.
He's a husband, a father, and an ordinary man at an ordinary job. He clocks in, works, clocks out, and goes home. But this man has a secret. Yes, a control design fanatic. One of the millions of people who, just like you, engages in the daily practice of making their home and workplace safer and more productive. He's a man who understands control and risk assessment and knows how to use it. It's a story of obsession, compulsion, anxiety, and romance.
Darling, your secret is safe with me. You see, I'm a control design fanatic too.
What? You, dear?
Yes! Yes! 1,000 times, yes! No longer must we hide our secrets.
We can share with the world the importance of control design and risk assessment.
Control design fanatics, now playing at an office near you.
That looks good. What's coming up next?
Oh, it's time for What Do You Do?
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to What Do You Do? I'm your host, Eddie Baxter, and we've got a really big show for you tonight. So let's get started as we meet our contestants and hear their story. My name is Chris Count, an insurance company manager and a control designer. Not an interior designer, but a control designer. Let's get that straight. Control design is something everyone does in their day-to-day life, on a personal and business level. Since regular control and risk assessment is essential to learning and improving, it is my responsibility to design control systems that produce or result in an acceptable level of residual risk at the lowest possible cost. I enjoy being a control designer, a profession which would make any mother proud. Signed, Chris Count. Before we get started, let's meet today's celebrity guest panelists. He's the polo-playing prince who's destined to become the next King of England. Straight from Buckingham Palace, let's meet Prince Chaz, don't call me Chuck Winslow.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. It's truly a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Prince Chaz. Next, she's the French glamour girl who became the queen of the silver screen. Say hello to the lovely Brigitte Bardot.
Bonjour, bonjour, Eddie. Je t'aime.
Finally, he's the cool cat with the blue suede shoes. Give a big rock-a-hula hello to the one and only king of rock and roll, Elvis Parsley. How you doing, King?
Oh, TCB, Eddie, and TCB.
Panelists, I'm sure you've watched the show and know how our game is played. You'll question our contestants, and based on the answers given, you'll try to determine who is the real control designer. Ladies first, we'll begin with Brigitte.
Oh, Mademoiselle, control designer number 2. Do control designers work in an office or a plant?
Either place or any place. Control designers are everywhere. You could be a control designer.
Oh, moi?
Of course you could, and so could a lot of people. Suppose you were a nurse, for instance. When a nurse checks medication sent from a pharmacy against a patient's chart, she's following a control to achieve an objective.
Sacré bleu! Monsieur control designer number 3. Why would checking medications against a patient's chart make a nurse a control designer?
Well, because by doing so, she's involved in a process of selecting and using controls to ensure objectives are achieved. In this case, to ensure the patient receives the correct dose and drug that the doctor prescribed.
Oh. Monsieur control designer number 1. Can you think of other examples of control design?
A hotel desk clerk. When a clerk asks you if you enjoyed your stay, what they're doing is checking with you to see if their service met or exceeded your expectations.
Oh, but I am so confused. Please tell me, Mademoiselle control designer number 2, is control design limited to the service industry?
No, it relates to almost everything, like emergency and disaster situations, for instance. Rescue teams planning a strategy for major disaster, or ensuring critical operations could operate with minimum interruption.
Brigitte, your time's up, and we move on to Prince Chaz.
Thank you. Control designer number 2. If I follow correctly, then you agree control design is a process of selecting and using controls to try to ensure objectives are achieved.
Yes, but I would add that a control designer conceives, defines, and refines controls as well.
Well, so if your objectives change...
Then you modify the controls.
Splendid. Number 3.
Eh? She's right, eh?
Yes. Control designer number 1. The headmaster at university taught me that control assessment and design was management's responsibility. Do you agree?
Oh, not exactly. Control, assessment, and design is a shared responsibility between workers and management or between work teams and internal auditors. It can also be a shared responsibility between work team members. But remember, although it is shared, the final responsibility does rest with management and the board of directors.
Whew, some tough questions. And with that, we move on to Elvis.
So, control designer number 1, what exactly is a control?
Well, controls are usually things people don't like. People think that controls are corporate time killers. But the answer is, there isn't a right answer. There are different definitions for internal control around the world.
Well, now, control designer number 2, when I played the Sands in Vegas, I remember they used the COSO integrated framework. And when I was in Germany, Dankeschön, mir Liebchen, they was using something else pretty similar to that.
That's right. Although no one definition is universally agreed on, all of the main definitions are very similar. In the United States, the COSO integrated framework says internal control is a process effected by a board of directors, management, and other staff to provide reasonable assurance objectives are achieved.
Give me some other definitions, control designer number 3.
You know, in Canada, eh? It's almost identical. Controls consist of dynamic, integrated processes which are affected by a board of directors, management, or other staff to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives.
Well, sort of like what my manager, Colonel Parker, did for me.
That's right, Elvis.
Well, speaking of controls, I was always in control when I started doing my karate thing, you know.
You sure were, Elvis.
Be still, baby, be still. So number 2, how does any of the control design and assessment apply to any of my fans that might be out there watching this here program?
Well, whether it's the public or private sector, at work or at home, people should periodically look at their objectives, look at their controls, and decide if they can live with the risk or chance that their objectives won't be achieved.
Well, control designer number 1, give me the lowdown, man.
Well, I would add that control design can be as simple as taking steps to make sure you're on time for an appointment or that all sales have been recorded. But then again, it can be as complex as making a product satisfactory to millions of customers. Control design goes across the board.
Each panelist has time for one more question. Brigitte?
Oh, je ne sais pas. This still sounds complicated. Control designer number 1. Simplify this for me.
Brigitte, let's say you want to be a big star.
Oh, but I am already a big star.
A bigger star, then. You need to have clear objectives, be committed, prepare a work plan, take lessons, track your progress, get feedback from professionals, and so on. What you're doing is choosing a control design that will give you some assurance you'll achieve your objective.
Prince Chaz?
Control designer number 3. If quality in business is so very important, why do we even acknowledge or accept risk?
Well, because even with controls, there's no absolute assurance you'll achieve your objective without a risk. Control design allows for establishing an acceptable level.
And now to Elvis.
Control designer number 2, who's the cat who decides the acceptable level of risk?
Well, that's the most difficult part. In older style companies, it's decided by management with the assistance of internal auditors or accountants or specialists in safety, environment, and customer service. People like that. But lately, more and more companies are beginning to involve employees at all levels in the process of looking at controls and making decisions.
And that wraps up the question and answer portion of our show. Now that we've heard from our contestants, let's look at the lovely prizes they'll receive.
Today's contestants will receive the limited edition Collection Internationale. Each commemorative medallion is cast in zinc, coated with pure copper or silver flake, and stamped with date of issue. Featuring famed landmarks, statesmen, and monarchs from North America and Europe, the Collection Internationale is sure to become a prized family heirloom.
Did you get a load of that? Oh, what a lovely prize! Now, as our panelists make up their minds and prepare their ballots, let's watch this message from our sponsor.
How many times have you needed a place for your high and low impact control options? Well, here's the answer. The Control Element Portfolio. Similar to stock portfolios, the choice of options is up to you, based on the importance of your objectives, how much you're prepared to invest to achieve your goals, and your perception of your risks, competence, and knowledge.
Morning. I've got a sweet little house in the suburbs, and I wanted to protect my family and my possessions. So my objectives were preventing harm to family members and visitors, and protecting my property by discouraging break-ins. To reach those objectives, I put several controls in my brand spanking new Control Element Portfolio. First, I installed the deadbolt lock on the front door. I added smoke detectors. I even added security lights. That's only 3 controls in my Control Element Portfolio. Oh, sure, they give me some level of protection, but I could have added more to increase my level of assurance. My Control Element Portfolio. How did I ever live without it?
Now it's time for our panelists to cast their votes for the contestant they believe is our actual control designer. Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3? We'll begin with Brigitte.
Oh, it was so difficult to select the correct one. They were all convincing. I was thinking number 2 or 3, but I still think control design is handled by auditors and accountants. So I will cast my vote for the very nice-looking man, number 1.
We now go to Prince Chad.
Well, as America's poet laureate Nipsey Russell would say, control design may sound mysterious, but now I think it could be serious, 'cause she knows more than I ever knew. I'm casting my vote for controller number 2.
And Elvis will cast the final vote.
Eddie, I'm all shook up, man, but it's now or never, so I'm throwing my weight behind contestant number 3.
Well, it's the moment of truth. Will our real control designer please stand up? That's right. What most of you forgot was something discussed at the very beginning of the program. Control design is something everyone does in their day-to-day life on a personal and business level. Each of these contestants is a control designer. Contestants, tell them your real names and what you do.
My name is Chris Count, and I am a control designing insurance company manager from Hartford, Connecticut.
My name is Leslie Doolittle, and I'm a control designing housewife from Yorkshire, England.
My name is Steve Dweeb, and I'm a control designing construction worker from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Terrific! I'd like to thank the panelists and the contestants for being here today, because not only was today's show fun, it was informative. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, control design is something each one of us does on a daily basis, from little Johnny Popcorn at the local bijou to Miss Rebecca Sunshine down on the farm. Each man, woman, and child is a control designer. As American as the White House and John Wayne, as Canadian as Parliament Hill and Gordon Lightfoot, as British as Buckingham Palace and Ringo Starr. Control design, not just a job, but a way of life. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
If you've been looking for control design and assessment models but didn't know where to find them, come on down and take a look at our first-class selections at Colonel Dave's Control Dealership. You get your choice of models complete with a menu of control options that are just about standard the world over. Now take a look at this little American beauty called the Report from COSO. That's the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. This highly integrated framework is distinctly designed to come fully equipped with all the exciting extras. Control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, monitoring, bucket seats, and rich Corinthian leather. A real honey of a deal. Now take a gander at this little baby we call the Coco, a Canadian classic. Now she's a little different, but a real sweetie in action. And she's got everything. Control environment, objectives and risks, control activities, monitoring, and change. This baby may look a lot like the UK's Cadbury framework, but she's a pure maple leaf mama, a real humdinger of a deal. And I tell you, if you shop today, I'll throw in a steal of a deal. Control elements picked up from the leading safety and environmental management frameworks, including the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award and a nifty little number we call the ISO 9000. Now, what I'm about to show you may make some of you scream with delight. Yeah! This here's a blend from the US, Canada, and the UK that picks up features from all the other models you've seen. This baby is loaded and allows you to pick and choose the options necessary to meet your control and risk needs. Now take a closer look. The purpose of this little baby is definitions and communication, commitment controls, planning and risk assessment processes, capability, continuous learning, direct control activities and mechanisms, indicator, measurement controls, employee well-being and morale, and process oversight. That's right, friends. This red-hot little control design menu's been turning a lot of heads lately, so don't forget it. And remember, every one of these control models is designed to help you get where you want to go, helping you reach your target destinations and achieve your objectives. Everyone's a winner when you take it from Colonel Dave's Control Dealership, located in beautiful downtown Durango. And don't forget, we're open Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. I said Sunday, son.
Good morning, birdies. Oh, hello, bunnies. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. It's nice to see you again. Last week on Uncle Waldo's Story Time, I told you about economist Gary Becker's work in extending the domain of economic theory to aspects of human behavior such as sociology, demography, and criminology. Some of you thought it was a scary story. I hope you didn't have any bad dreams. Today, I'd like to read you a story called Fireman Frank Learns About Residual Risk Status. Ready? Come closer now. Here we go. Fireman Frank was a dedicated man. He understood control, design, and assessment and practiced it every day. Depending on the controls he chose, he knew a particular residual risk would result or be eliminated. Fireman Frank also knew residual risk referred to the real or potential risk of not achieving an objective. He knew it was something he needed to monitor closely, and he could do so by obtaining or developing information in 4 categories.
Indicators. This is what I know about the effectiveness of my current control choices. Although I am a very good fireman, my home is a fire trap. Over the last 6 months, I have fought 3 fires at my own home. These fires serve as indicators that improvements need to be made.
Do you see the high-risk areas? Yes, you do. It's clear when Fireman Frank bought the home, he had no idea what controls were in place or how effective they were. That's why most quality management frameworks place importance on information related to the effectiveness of the systems and the controls in use, so they can tell where a problem may be. Then said Fireman Frank,
The second category I need to be aware of when it comes to residual risk is impacts. Impacts let me determine how bad it would be if an objective was not achieved. If I don't bring my wiring up to code, I could be fined, my family could be harmed, my house could burn down, and we all could die. When I consider the consequences of a fire, it is a very high impact.
see Fireman Frank? He's beginning to realize his own mortality. Well, after scaring himself, Fireman Frank considered the third category.
Impediments. This includes situations which stand in the way of adjusting controls or otherwise managing residual risk. Before knowing all this, I might have smoked in bed, scrimped on good new wiring, or put up with a neighbor who stored flammable materials in his garage. But no longer.
Suddenly, Fireman Frank realized he was at the final category.
Concerns. This catch-all category is for concerns I have about the current control effectiveness or residual risk status. If I think real hard, I'd say it can relate to the situations that could occur given the controls in place and the probability of those things happening. But enough about that. It's time for action.
But before Fireman Frank could decide how his goal was to be achieved, he needed to decide how much risk he would accept.
My, this is where I'm stymied. I will empower a work team who will sponsor this objective. They may not be the only ones involved in trying to assure the objective is achieved, but they are in a logical position to coordinate and implement the control design and assessment work.
Since Fireman Frank is the owner of his house, he has primary responsibility for the goals to be considered, although the sponsor teams can also own a business and quality objective. Isn't that interesting? The next day, Fireman Frank gathered his sponsors and said,
From now on, my objective is no more fires. My level of acceptable residual risk is 0, and I'm leaving it up to my sponsors to ensure that I will meet this objective. I've checked to see my portfolio is optimized.
Fireman Frank means he's checked to see if his controls are at the lowest possible cost while his risks remain low.
And I will do my part to reach my goal. I have bought smoke detectors, and I also have a crew waiting to install new wiring and a sprinkler system, which will help to reduce or eliminate the chance of future fires.
Then Fireman Frank implemented a plan to do a detailed risk assessment, developed an escape plan, assigned additional responsibilities, and took other steps to eliminate fire-related threats. The next day, Fireman Frank said,
Thanks to you, my sponsors, my family and I will sleep well tonight, knowing that the new controls are in place.
Wasn't that a fun story? Fireman Frank sure learned a lot about residual risk status. Join me next week when I read the story about Consumer Price Index by selected cities and regions. Bye now.
Dear, that reminds me. Alex is almost out of college, and we still haven't talked to him about control assessment and design.
Well, I'm sure kids are talking about that sort of thing all the time. I'm sure he's picked something up on the streets.
Well, that may be where you got your education, Mr. Mann. But no son of mine is going to enter the workforce without understanding the secrets of controlled design.
Okay. I'll talk with him.
No. We'll talk with him. Shh. Here he comes now.
Mom, Dad, this is a great day for me. I'm leaving home to enter the workforce.
Now, Alex, before you leave, your mother and I would like to talk to you.
About what?
About something very important. Something most parents discuss with their children while they're teenagers.
When the parents are teenagers or when the kids are teenagers?
Now, this is no time to be a smart aleck, Alex. We want to talk to you about CD.
CD?
Yes, controlled design and assessment.
Oh, geez, Dad. Biff's coming over and we're supposed to enter the workforce together.
Alex, this is something your father and I feel is important for you to understand before you enter the workforce.
But I've already learned about Canadian and British control designs on my trip last summer. Biff's taught me a lot.
Well, maybe Biff hasn't taught you everything, or maybe he's left something out. Now, what has Biff told you about internal control?
Dad, we're not going to talk about this in front of Mom, are we?
It's okay, son. Girls and moms learn this stuff too. And if you want to get ahead, you need to know a few things. Now, what does internal control mean to you?
It means being able to look interested in this lecture, even though I know it's a waste of time.
Alex!
Golly, Mom.
Alex, it may seem like a joke now, but it will look different when you enter the corporate world. Why, I recall when I was your age, I said internal controls were bureaucratic, time-wasting procedures developed by auditors to slow production and inhibit my creativity.
And I thought they were extraterrestrials trying to control my brain.
Son, when it comes to doing...
Oh, that must be Biff now. Come on in, Biff.
Well, hi, Biff. I'm glad you're here. I was just telling Alex about internal control.
Well, gee, Mr. Beaumont, I already know all about internal control.
But maybe not enough. In this house, internal controls are methods, procedures, equipment, or things to provide an additional assurance that pertinent business and quality objectives will be achieved.
But how can we ever remember all that?
It's right there on the screen. Just write it down, like these people are doing. Now, how many internal controls do you think my company needs?
I don't know. 11?
No. Some people think just enough to keep our board of directors out of jail, and others enough to keep the auditors off our backs.
Kids, even though those are all true, perhaps the best answer is enough internal controls to provide reasonable assurance that your father's company objectives will be achieved.
That's a swell answer, hon.
Thank you, dear. What are you waiting for? Write it down.
Oh, yeah.
Boys, as you get older, you'll find that a lot of people, even strangers you meet on the street, will come up and ask you about control design. Now, what will you say when they ask if your company's internal controls can be relied on to ensure that important corporate objectives are achieved?
I'll tell them that I have no idea what my corporate objectives are, and if it's anything like your company, they probably change it every week anyway.
Oh, you little scamp, you're almost right. Although a pessimist would say controls only provide a level of assurance that the designers and maintainers feel necessary, an optimist would say that the controls can be relied upon to achieve as much as is practical given our circumstances.
Alex, remember when you went to work for your dad at Dad and Lad Day?
Sure I do.
Dad and Lad Day.
Now, if I told you that residual risk could be described as events or situations where businesses or quality objectives were not necessarily being met even with controls in place, do you think that your father's company would accept residual risk?
Well, I'm sort of fuzzy about that, Mom. But I guess chances are Dad will have kept any risk a secret because management will want to believe everything is under control.
Yeah, like when we never told your old man the time he got booted out of school.
What the? Well, almost right again, boys. Even though some people think residual risk reflect badly on their performances, or that they're failures if they don't meet the objectives, risks are accepted by almost all companies. It's necessary for a profitable operation.
Darling, remember when your inventory found out that 5% of the items you counted were wrong? Your inventory was off by 2 million units.
Now, that's a classic example of a control system whose residual risk status had less than perfect accuracy. Now, even though my new boss didn't find it funny, my old boss would have handled it a little bit more laid back. I hate my new boss.
Wow. I never thought of it like that before.
Son, I know this is a delicate subject, and I want you to think about this before you answer me. How will your company decide how much residual risk is acceptable?
I believe the dreams and premonitions of senior management will be my guiding force.
Cool.
Alex!
Coin toss?
Alex, this is control design. Think about it.
If I had to guess, I'd say decisions on residual risk are made daily by staff at all levels across all departments in the company.
Guess what?
I'm almost right?
No, you're absolutely right. Before my company got smart, we used to have consultants stacked up 3 deep in the corridors. Sometimes management would create committees or task forces just to give the supervisors something to do.
Things would change so fast. Your father would be given empowerment, and then it would be taken away and replaced by a procedures manual 2 inches thick.
Even though we don't like it when some things go wrong, we need to know what the risks are so we can make a knowledgeable choice on how much we can accept while still achieving our goals. Now, boys, someday you too will be discussing with your children the secrets of control design. Just like taking a bath. It's something that we do every day, but just don't think about.
Son, what your father is trying to say is that control design isn't a concept that was thought up by some big-brain pencil-pushing, bean-counting auditors.
No, control designs are an important part of life and are created by people like you, like me, like them. From little Johnny Popcorn down at the local bijou to Miss Rebecca Sunshine down on the farm.
Dad, I think they already did this at the beginning of the video.
Oh. Well, tell you what. Before you leave to join the workforce, there's something on television I think you need to see. It's all about building a control design of your very own.
Great. We love TV.
Hi, I'm Mike Miller, and welcome to Building Blocks. Earlier in the program, we used examples about personal safety and asset safeguarding to illustrate the main points of control assessment and design. Now, you at home control designers may already know that control design assessment concepts are the same for objectives related to product quality, customer service, cost control, fraud prevention, safety, accounting, computer security, environmental compliance, legal compliance, and any other type of end result objective. Now that brings us to today's show, where Sandy here is working on a control design of her own. Now this looks pretty good, Sandy. Is this your first control design?
No, Mike, I'm on my second one now. The first was a 3-control medium risk model outside Toronto. I learned a lot from that one, but I realized there were some things I wanted to add.
Now Sandy's used 2 different versions of the core model we talked about. The first control design was a startup, and it was drawn out for that particular situation. But it could also be used in major re-engineering or redevelopment situations. But for this project, she'll be using ongoing control assessment and design analysis, since she already has the initial design in place. Will you need a table saw for this?
No, just employees. In some organizations, the majority of control assessment is done by management and specialists. Today, I'm trying to work on empowerment and continuous learning, so I'm passing more and more of the responsibility to work teams and employees at all levels.
Now, it looks like you've already got the foundation in place. Now, tell me, what sort of objectives do you use when it comes to business and quality?
Well, like all control designers, the same business and quality objectives are going to relate to the same broad areas. So these should be in everyone's toolkit. One of the first, and what some consider to be the most important objective category, is profitability. Now, that includes revenue maximization or minimizing unnecessary cost.
You know, my grandfather gave me that objective when I was a boy, and I still have it, too.
Next, I always keep product and service quality nearby. That's real handy. Then, there's customer service. Keep it honed razor sharp. You'll need it.
What's this?
Safeguarding assets. It helps you protect what you've got.
So you don't let other people use your objectives?
I prefer not to, because it's better that they make their own objectives for their personal use. Now, this one is called avoidance of unintentional exposure to risk. It's best to know what could bite you, so keep this one in mind. Now, this one's heavy. Here.
Hey, whoa! You're not kidding. Now, what's this?
It's compliance with external laws and regulations. You'll notice it looks very similar to this objective, compliance with internal laws. In other words, make sure you're keeping up with new policies, regulations, and authorities, that sort of thing.
Now, it must cost a lot to design and build a framework to support these objectives.
Not necessarily. What they cost is up to you. What you're trying to do is meet the objective at the lowest possible cost with a level of residual risk you're comfortable with. Your risk tolerance will affect the amount of money you spend on controls. Obtaining high certainty that an objective will be achieved can cost a lot of money.
For instance?
Well, think of avoiding or minimizing the chance for an accident in a nuclear facility, or making sure the engines on a jet plane keep running. These are two objectives that most people hope companies have strong portfolios for.
Good point.
Now, here's one I call reliability of internal and external reporting. If you don't have that, you don't have the facts, and you can't monitor your progress correctly.
Oh, now I don't like the looks of this one.
Not many people do. This is prevention and detection of fraud. Fraud isn't pretty to look at, but it exists.
Okay, and this last one?
It's organization-specific objectives.
So these are the 10 types of business and quality objectives every control designer and builder should be familiar and comfortable with.
Sure, and they can build designs that support the objectives themselves.
All right, let's take a look around and see what you've done so far.
Well, we just put these up. I call them the walls of truth.
Why the walls of truth?
Because no matter what the business and quality objective relates to, what is always true is this. Somehow, a person or process has consciously or unconsciously built control designs for a group's business and quality objectives. These control choices always result in some level or state of residual risk, which may or may not have been formally considered.
So that's what you mean by the wall of truth?
That's it. The main goal of control design and assessment training is to help people make decisions about controls and risks more consciously and more knowledgeably.
Sandy, you've got the right tools, and it looks like you know how to use them. When we come back next week, we'll see how Sandy's progressing. So long.
And at Grand Corporation, managers dropped a bombshell on their 1,000 employees. Phil Potts is on the scene with the story.
Thank you, Elaine. The Grand Corporation is usually a busy place, but today, it's a different story. Management has informed employees that they truly appreciate the work they've been doing, but wherever you look, reaction is the same. Shock, disbelief, concern. Now, today we have with us CEO Pat Sharp. Ms. Sharp, now, any comments?
Well, we realize that control design is something our employees have been doing for years. They just didn't know it. We want them to be aware of it.
So why do they have to be aware of it now?
Because we want them to understand the key role they play as control designers and that the decisions they make every day have a direct impact on whether we achieve our objectives.
Well, let's check with those employees and see how they're reacting to this. So how do you feel about all this?
Well, it's weird to learn I've been doing this control design thing all along without knowing it. Now that I'm aware of it, there's a chance I could mess up. Then what? What happens if I make a decision and it doesn't work out? Will I suffer the repercussions?
With control design and assessment, they want us to feel comfortable working as a team to analyze risks. Frankly, I don't see where the time is coming from. It's not like we sit around all day doing nothing.
In the past, we were afraid to mention our mistakes to upper management or auditors. We thought we'd lose our jobs. I only hope that the auditors and upper management can handle the truth. This place hasn't exactly encouraged us to look at or even talk about our problems or screw-ups in the past.
Auditors are saying everyone realizes the critical first step in becoming the best that they can be is to take a hard look at the way things really are, even when the picture isn't very pretty. Now you, sir, you're an auditor. How do you feel about this?
I know there's going to be concern. We'll still have to know about significant control issues following regular audits. But when a group does a thorough job describing controls and risks, I'm pleased they've done the review. I'll give feedback on the assessment, and if the problem or situation has been described and reported up the ladder, we won't waste everybody's time repeating what has already been said.
A major concern of employees is wondering if Mr. Auditor Guy is telling the truth. Well, let's review the tape with the benefit of the WIIA Truth-O-Meter.
We won't waste everybody's time repeating what has already been said.
Wow, well, that's a first. Now, one topic mentioned repeatedly by employees is they're wondering if they can deliver bad news without being shot as the messenger. Now, what are management's feelings on this?
It's time our company begins to address the safety factors of speaking up, of being candid. There's the fear that talking about our problems and risks is dangerous. That's why we're making a conscious effort to become a learning and continuous improvement organization that can handle changes well. Of course, there are some old-style managers who are scared of changes, but everyone needs to understand that examining our current reality is the key to our survival and success. Mistakes and problems will be viewed as an opportunity to learn, and we'll go on from there.
Well, that's 2 in a row. This is Phil Potts. Back to you, Elaine.
Thanks, Phil. Stay tuned to WIIA for International Business Break with Tony Dow Jones.
Good evening. I'm Tony Dow Jones with International Business Break. Tonight's topic is control and risk self-assessment, the idea of work teams analyzing and reporting on themselves. One person having a problem with this idea of self-assessment is this young man who asks that we conceal his identity. We'll call him Guest X, although his real name is Paul Prickley from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pat Sharp is CEO of the Grand Corporation. Ms. Sharp is here tonight to address the fears about control design. Guest X will give you the first word.
First off, nothing on my performance contract says conduct regular control assessments and assist in the development of high-powered, low-cost control designs. Isn't that what management paid internal audit for? To send auditors to system development steering committees? Don't we have internal auditors signing off on controls to cover our mistakes?
That may have been true, but consider this. When something gets screwed up big time, well, the buck doesn't stop with internal audit, it stops with us. Although we can still rely on internal auditors to get us started with control assessment and design through training workshops and give us suggestions if they see better control options we haven't considered, in the end, the responsibility is still ours, and we have to take it.
So, Ms. Sharp, what will happen to the internal auditors who relinquish their stranglehold as primary assessors and reporters?
Well, they'll still be there to give feedback and advice and to help people learn about control design and assessment because it helps us achieve goals.
With that, let's meet Wolfgang Schultz, an auditor and consultant from Zurich, Switzerland, who has some advice for management and employees. Wolfgang?
Thank you, Tony. One thing companies should be aware of is that there's a growing tendency for regulators and customers to require that organizations know what they are doing and why.
Why?
Because regulators are primarily concerned about controls related to external disclosures, the environment, safety, legal compliance, and fraud. Meanwhile, customers are worried about product quality and customer service. That's why auditors are being asked to help organizations make these representations truthfully, and support them with facts.
So even though employees can help improve a company's future, auditors will still be crucial to a company's success.
That's right, sir. Auditors will be playing an even more important role, helping management make these assertions, and in some cases giving independent opinions on representations made by management and boards. Internal auditors will help management and work teams determine levels of quality assurance inherent in products and how they can manage to comply with new rules. That means they'll be relying on more auditors like me, and that will be a good thing.
So what's the bottom line reason why management is defining control design and assessment for work teams?
First, let me say that auditors are necessary. They're polite, well-groomed, and kind to animals. But we prefer to look at the bigger picture by including the team effort of employees. In addition to being good common sense, team-driven self-assessment will help meet these new external expectations.
Coming from management, it all makes sense for them. They want more work out of us, but what are we going to get in return? I mean, what's in it for me?
Ms. Sharp, there's concern that your company is asking too much and delivering too little. When you establish control design and assessment and decide what residual risks are acceptable, what's in it for your employees?
I think the primary benefit is that people who do a good job managing, assessing, and reporting on control and risk are the people who will be more likely to obtain their goals, namely empowerment and a suitable atmosphere for creating and sustaining continuous learning and improvement.
Obtaining personal goals and achieving new levels of responsibility. Two reasons why control design is an important part of life. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, control design is something each one of us does on a daily basis. From little Johnny Popcorn at the local bijou to Miss Rebecca Sunshine down on the farm. Each man, woman and child is a control designer. As American as the White House and John Wayne, as Canadian as Parliament Hill and Gordon Lightfoot, as British as Buckingham Palace and Ringo Starr. Control design, not just a job, but a way of life. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thompson, we've been nailed again for not following the corporate procedures manual. You start following the rules or we'll be in deep trouble. One more audit rating of unsatisfactory controls and the VP will be breathing down your neck like a teenager slow dancing at the high school prom.
Gee, Mr. Sullivan sure laid it on the line, and how. But golly, how can control design help? I mean, what's in it for me? Well, the first thing that's in it for me is that I am out of here. First, it's the 1990s. Those old-fashioned scare tactics and 40-pound rule books just aren't effective. Okay, here's the deal. We need to recap what you've learned about control design, and since I have the script, I'm the best person to teach you. Since the last thing you want to remember is a laundry list of statistics and formulas, the first thing I should do is answer the question, what's in it for me? Or, in this case, what's in it for you? Now, as corny as this sounds, the biggest benefit you'll receive from control design is, no, not a yacht. No, not a vacation home. Cut that out. This is serious now. The primary benefit you'll receive is that if your work team, whether it's you and a few friends or a division or whatever, if you do a good job managing, assessing, and reporting on control and risk, you're more likely to be empowered by senior management. That's not brown-nosing. It's just doing your job and bettering your opportunities. When you achieve empowerment, the result is a better business atmosphere. Now, it doesn't come easy. It's something you have to practice. I remember it took me a few tries. I was on my swim team in Muncie, Indiana, but I couldn't quite get the hang of it because I couldn't swim a stroke. But I wanted to get better, so I practiced swimming at home. Every month or two, my coach would drop in and tell me what I was doing wrong. Unfortunately, his instruction was too little, too late. But when I turned 16, I developed my own overall strategy to become a champion. My goal was aided by a handsome young internal auditor who offered feedback on my diet, my conditioning program, and training regimen, all while keeping me apprised of the skill level of other swimmers. With his help, I charted my progress and established target time objectives. Next, the handsome young internal auditor became my personal trainer and offered daily instruction. Then I utilized peer reviews, asking other swimmers for advice. Well, it took some time, but with those controls in place, my skills improved. I made the Olympic swim team, won a gold medal, made a fortune as a professional, and with enough money to do what I wanted, I decided to become an actress in training films. So let me stress this.
So, Jill, what's going on?
I was just wrapping up a training film. You want to help? You've done this before.
Well, sure, I've got the time. Where are you up to?
Well, I was just telling them that they should develop control designs and do a good job monitoring them. It results in empowerment, which their work team can maintain for the long term, like what we did.
Right. If not, chances are your work team will be relegated back to a workplace operating on hierarchical supervision, rule-driven inspections. The choice is yours.
Now that you know what's in it for you, let's go back over the points. The first thing to remember is point number 1. You need to make sure that end result-focused objectives are defined and communicated with everybody that contributes to their achievement. Okay, now, once again in English, everybody should know what's going on so they can help. Business and quality objectives can relate to lots of things. Product quality, customer service, minimizing unnecessary costs, prevention and detection of fraud, regulatory compliance, external reporting, safety, environment, and other areas relevant to the overall success of the organization. If the end result isn't made clear, controls will rarely be effective or optimized, and the result is an unacceptable or dangerous residual risk.
Point number 2, check whether the people that contribute to the achievement of a goal are committed to that goal. Now, there's no mistaking that. Suppose the president wants customer service improved because you ranked dead last in a customer service satisfaction survey. Duh! Now, if it turned out that everyone was measured and rewarded based on how much product was shipped and the speed that the tasks were executed, there still may be a problem with commitment to servicing customers. If people aren't committed to the achievement of an objective, other priorities will almost always intervene and win out. Getting people to buy into your organization's objectives isn't easy, but it is essential to success over the long term. If you realize the goal is just wishful thinking by some senior manager or policy writer, you may want to reconsider your approach, your goal, or your team.
In situations where controls are ineffective or non-existent, the root cause is that people involved haven't accepted the goal. Items like job descriptions, performance contracts, organization design, and the entire concept of reward and punishment are some controls that contribute to the commitment of employees.
So save yourself the time and aggravation. If the real problem is the people responsible haven't accepted the objectives as valid, there's no point in identifying and writing up a list of control deficiencies and risks.
Now we're in the home stretch. We're at point number 3, the very basis of control design and assessment and life as we know it. Every control design should have an effective indicator or performance measurement control to monitor whether the output is acceptable.
In English?
How can you tell what you're doing is right? A speedometer is an indicator of how fast you're going. A thermometer indicates how warm it is. You need to create a way to measure what you're getting is what you want. And it may be more than one control which serves as a calibrating or self-adjusting mechanism. Quite a few quality improvement programs place great value on indicator controls. What's an indicator control? I'm glad you asked.
Oh, when it comes to safety or environmental situations, indicators or performance measurement controls will tell the work team the effectiveness of the current control design. Only then is information available to make sensible decisions about risk acceptance. If you find out too late that the current control design isn't good enough, there could be customers lost, substandard products shipped, injuries, loss of life, money wasted. Officers and directors could go to jail for failure to comply with environmental laws. So an indicator could be a budget to actual cost comparison, control charts, benchmarking, statistical analysis and reports, or self-assessment processes. It could even be peer reviews.
Remember what I learned as a swimmer? I wanted to be the best swimmer I could be. After receiving guidance from the handsome internal auditor, I checked my performance regularly and ended up with a gold medal and a fortune in endorsements. Plus, the pointers I learned on self-assessing my control design can be applied to a variety of situations.
The same holds true in your business. You need to know if your products and services are actually satisfying your customers. If you make a video like this one, you have to determine the end results the film should help you reach and measure whether those results are being achieved. If the video is supposed to improve your understanding of internal control and the audience's role in it, you need to check to see if it actually is accomplishing the desired end results. You have to make sure you're not just becoming a legend in your own mind.
We all know it's hard to avoid the comfort of a routine where your job has become so natural you'd prefer not to think about things going wrong. Yet some countries view the avoidance of assessing situations as a breach of officer and director due diligence expectations. So, the bottom line is, you need to know. That's why every control design must have as many and as powerful indicator controls as the control designers can come up with, and that the organization can afford. And that's it. The 3 rules to help you get started building and maintaining high-powered, low-cost control designs. So let's review. You begin by developing, defining, or having a reasonably clear business and quality objective.
Next, you identify what controls are in place or in use that help provide assurance that the objective will be achieved. That design must include, at a minimum, commitment and indicator controls. Without commitment to the objective, the chance of it being achieved are remote. Without high-quality indicator controls, you may be out of touch with reality.
Then you need to monitor the residual risk status that results from the control selected or in use, and include the information produced by the indicator controls. This should include information on impacts, impediments, and other relevant information that helps make wise decisions on the acceptability of residual risk status.
Finally, every control design should be continuously assessed to determine if it is optimized. Do you have the lowest possible cost combination of control elements that still provide an acceptable level of assurance that your objective will be achieved?
The main concepts are the same. So now you know what control assessment and design means, why you should want to learn about it, and what you need to know to do a better job at control design. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, control design is something each one of us does on a daily basis. From little Johnny Popcorn down at the local bijou to Miss Rebecca Sunshine down on the farm. All right then, fine. Good luck with your continued careers as control designers and analysts, and may all your designs be optimal.